The first thing you want to prepare for a job interview is the tell me about yourself. And the simple reason for this is because it's one of the first questions getting asked, and it's the one that has the highest probability of getting asked in pretty much any interview. So by preparing for this one, you actually increase your chances to have a better rapport with the person interviewing with, and automatically increase your chances to get a job. The second thing you want to prepare for an interview is motivation. What makes you excited about this role? Why this company? And this might come in various flavors, but the point is that you want to really be clear on what you're going to talk about here, because what happens is 99% of candidates simply praise the company. I know this is an extraordinary company, and all my friends told me it's an extraordinary company, so that's why I want to join you. But that's pretty templated and boring, you know. So imagine yourself, an interviewer, hearing this 20 times in a day. So try to come up with something more interesting, such as what's in for you from this opportunity, or maybe that one thing that differentiates you from other candidates. I'll also link some resources in the video description. The next thing you want to consider for a job interview is to know your strength and especially your weakness. Like, for example, many people have a strength, many engineers have a strength, you know, the technical abilities going into this role, which is fine, you know, so you want to advertise on your strength. This is always good advice in a job interview. Now, when it comes to weakness, and if I may link to the other example, many technical people cannot speak well. So if speaking is not your strength, then, you know, you should eventually speak less. Try to listen more, which, by the way, it's listening. It's often even harder than speaking. So by knowing your strengths and your weakness, you can simply make the right trade-offs when answering any types of question, especially about approaching how you're going to answer the question that you're getting asked. Prepare to fail, or if you want the lighter version, prepare for the unexpected. Now, why I'm saying this is because I know many of you going into a job interview overly confident, such as Dan is going to only be a formality, you know, I'm very good for the job, someone recommended me, so it should be straightforward. Now, my experience has shown that nobody gets jobs at high-performing companies this way. So that's why I'd rather advise you to be cautiously optimistic and probably also prepare for ups and downs during an interview, because that's what interviewing is all about after all. And importantly here, when something doesn't go as expected, immediately get back on track and perform, because many people don't. Many people, when they fall, they stay down. So always get back on track and have a cautiously optimistic attitude. Many of you find it difficult to answer the tell me about the time when types of questions, and I highly recommend you to prepare written answers, written star answers for these types of questions. And if you're looking for a list of the most commonly asked ones, I prepared one in the video descriptions right next to that like button. Roleplay is something that you'll find particularly efficient if you prepare the theoretical part and you have good content that you would want to communicate here. Now, of course, ideally this roleplay should be with someone else, someone who should also give you some relevant feedback. Now, from experience, I know this is not always the case, so what works is to also record yourself, record your answers, and probably even more interestingly, to speak in the mirror and to simply self-evaluate your answers, because oftentimes what you consider works best will actually work best, especially for junior to mid-level types of roles. So this is also another way to gain confidence in the way you communicate, especially for more technical roles. Something that many candidates overlook going into a job interview is to prepare the questions that they are supposed to ask their interviewer at the end of the session. For example, what are the 3 most important qualities that the ideal candidate should have for this role? And of course, I linked some other various resources in the job description, in the video description, of course. But even more interestingly here, also you should keep an eye on how the conversation evolves during your interview, and maybe, you know, you can make a combination between the questions that you prepare for them and some new question that you thought would be quite cool asking at the end of the interview. And believe me when I tell you that these questions can either make or break your show, especially for junior to mid-level roles. Something interesting that surprised me while coaching people for phone interviews in the US was the network, the cellular network coverage there. And I'm saying this because it went so bad at times that, you know, I couldn't understand what the other party was saying. And in a job interview, it's your interest that you're going to be understood, because you're the one going to be talking most of the time. So I'd very much encourage you to double check on that connection. And by the way, if you're having a virtual on-site interview, you shouldn't be too concerned about the quality of the connection, simply because you can always fall back on the audio only line. Now, a few other house cleaning items here. Some people prefer to stand, like I'm standing right now, for an interview, which is perfectly fine. Some people prefer to sit. And if you sit, just ensure that you will kind of lean a bit forward, you know, to have a bit more energy when communicating. Maybe keep a glass of water nearby. And if your interview is short, maybe also consider some sugar, some chocolate going into the interview. Prepare cheat sheets. Now, many of you are wondering, hey, but what if my interviewer will spot that I have cheat sheets, especially during a virtual on-site? And from experience here, your interviewer will actually appreciate if you have a cheat sheet, simply because that shows the fact that you invested a lot of energy and time into a thorough preparation for that job interview. What you should be really paying attention to here is what you write on that cheat sheet. And keep in mind, there are very few people who can actually read those the answer that they wrote without coming across as overly scripted. So also a very important note to keep in mind about these cheat sheets is that in an interview you should expect the unexpected. In other words, no matter how many questions you prepare written answers for, you will always get a new question to answer. And if you're someone who easily gets blocked, I would rather recommend you not to use a cheat sheet with those answers to as many questions as possible, simply because you're going to panic easily if you get a question, and you will get a question for which you haven't prepared for. So all in all, yes, cheat sheets are a pretty strong idea going into the job interview, and definitely recommend you to take this seriously.